Hello, folks, and welcome to our game with myself, Shane Stapleton, and of course, joined at the hip as ever by Michael Verney. Michael, where do we start off with the weekend of GA we've just seen? Like, there's plenty to talk about outside of the club game, but to start anywhere else would be absolutely crazy after what we saw. St Thomas is on top, Glen on top, both in dramatic circumstances.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. You might kick off the old music there because it's probably drowning me out a small bit, but I'd say there's music flying around Peterswell and Kilcrease this morning and into last night as well and up around Mara too. Asher, what a day. The club finals has just delivered. Like, they probably over-delivered the last couple of years between, the Harry Ruddle final and then Kilcoo, and then you obviously have the 16th man last year and Ballyhale and Dunley, and then yesterday was just unbelievable. And I thought even the symmetry between the two games, probably two frees missed at the end of both games to level them. I would say two leaders leading and driving their teams, particularly in adversity, in David Burke and Conor Glass. When things were going bad, they were the ones probably driving things forward. But like, just a magnificent day. Like, just thinking about the hurling, like, and you're talking about like big moments and flashpoints, and you're like, 10 games wouldn't have as many things happened in the hurling final. It's absolutely crazy. It's nearly hard to know where to start. There's so many different talking points. And both games were right on a knife edge. At no stage could you really call, I'd probably call O'Loughlin's at one stage in the hurling, and then you're probably calling Brigid's at one stage in the football, and then they start flipping towards the end. It was just amazing stuff, really.
St Thomas's probably looked like they were going to be out of sight in the first half because O'Loughlin's had so many chances, and like when we got towards the break and you're thinking 10 points to 8, they're pulling in at half time and you're like, how on earth is this the case? Now, it's not that St Thomas's hadn't created their chances, and maybe we probably hadn't fully taken into account the strength of the wind at that stage, but like, you look at all the misses they had. So they had the 8 points, but they had 22 scoring chances or efforts overall. They hit 6 of them wide, dropped 3 of them short, and had 5 of them blocked. Like, to me, they looked like a team that was kind of panicking and kind of, I don't know, just about surviving. Sure, obviously the Fintan Burke goal situation was crazy the way that panned out. And, there was probably a couple of times that O'Loughlin Gaels let them off. Now, with the far side, there was obviously a couple of decisions that went for O'Loughlin. So, first off, before we ever get to the red card in the second half for James Regan, what did you make of the 3 decisions in the first half? Vis-a-vis Jordan Malloy getting away with it, Conor Heary probably getting away with it, and of course the goal decision that wasn't.
Yeah, mad. Jordan Malloy's was the one to David Burke into his face. Yeah,
it was like pushing head on head. I mean, headbutt would be a little bit extreme, but pushing heads.
Yeah, then you obviously have the Thomas's one where was it Shawnee Bulger ended up nearly in Hill 16 at one stage as well.
Was that Bulger or was it Luke Hogan?
Or maybe it was Luke Hogan. I thought it was 15, but like, how nothing happened out of that incident was crazy. Like, not even going and talking to anyone or anything like that. Like, it was like, you could say you were shepherding your man, but he fairly gave him a fair push, and he ended up getting absolutely upended in over the Horden, and he was in there for a good while. Like, the amount of incidents here, I suppose, like Conor Heary's one, to me, it was shoulder leaning into chest, but it wasn't like, to me, it wasn't straight into the chest. I think he got him just around here, but just probably in here. But it was
what part of the shoulder is that?
It's probably just the start of your pecs. But like, I would have been saying, if I was Conor Heary's manager and he didn't go in and shoulder, or he pulled out a tackle, you'd nearly be upset because he was there to be hit and he was wide open.
Go in and just shepherd.
Yeah, no, but he was there. He was wide open. Now he missed him by a small bit. I don't think that's a red card. Now listen, I don't think James Regan's a red card either. And I have to say, I thought Emile was made of that now. I really do. I thought Emile was made of that when, depending on what angle you look at it. You look at it from one angle, you don't see any contact. You look at it from another, you see a bit of contact. But I don't know. It looked like to me that Jack Nolan was looking for the contact, or looking to make the most of the contact. That's just what I saw anyway, because the hands were up in the air nearly straight away. Now, you could say maybe David Burke was looking to make the most of that one as well, a small bit too. But Heary's yellow card, I've no problem with that. Listen, I don't want to see lads been sent off. I don't like. I was chatting one journalist after, and he said like there should have been 3 lads sent off, and like there were incidents in the game. Were any of them red card incidents? I probably don't think they were, being honest with you.
Yeah, well, look, I'm going to go through some comments and then throw in my own tuppence worth. Traumspieler says, it will be hard to top those 2 games all year. I think your end of year show for 2024 has already got its 2 games of the year. You could be right on that one, Traumspieler. Robert Muldoon says, sending off was a copy of Richie Hogan in 2019. A tackler tricked by a quick step inside and a ref tricked by an overly dramatic throwing of arms up in the air and flinging the head back. 36 and counting, of course, Kilkenny man says, very like Cathal Barrett making a meal of things. Now, I would have said, I wouldn't want red cards for any of those decisions in the final, including when, if it was Luke Hogan or Shawnee Bulger, whichever it was, being pushed over the hoarding. I think that's probably a hard one to prove from the referee's point of view. Yeah, there's a bit of a nudge there, all right. Like, to me, it looks like there is probably a push, but it's hard to think that there's kind of violent conduct in there. Yeah, it's not great, but at the same time, was he trying to launch him out over the hoarding? Probably not. And luckily, he just landed in the net and was suspended there, so there was no harm, no foul for a finish. I know some people will take a fit of the vapours and say, well, look, any violent sort of thing at all, it has to be stamped down on. Fine. That's not how I'd look at it. I would have said that the contact between James Regan and Nolan was like a glance. And people are jumping on me straight away since yesterday saying, oh yeah, the Richie Hogan Cathal Barrett thing, because I would have said that was a red card, which I do believe it was, but I would have said that was caught far more on the meat. Do I think Richie Hogan went to do him? No, but he completely caught him with the forearm / elbow / whatever part you want to say in the head a lot more fully than Jack Nolan was caught in this situation. So there's where I would see the difference. And I think a Kilkenny person, if they're going to say that wasn't, or that was a red card for James Regan, then obviously it was a red card back from 2019. But that would be my thought. I wouldn't really want red cards for any of them. I do think Jack Nolan...
Poor old Lara Corbett would end up in jail for about 6 months for that one on Owen Murphy back in the day, if that was the case. Yeah. I have to say now, I thought there was a fair meal made of that. And at no stage when I looked at it in real time, and even a time or two after, did I think it was a red. Yeah, you can show it from one side, and it was glancing. It was ever so glancing, I would have said. Like, ever so glancing. There was, to me, it looked like there was absolutely zero intent. Whereas if you look back at the Richie Hogan one, I think it was an awful lot more clear cut. Am I saying that there was intent in that one as well? Not necessarily, but I think it looked a lot worse, and it looked an awful lot more obvious.
Yeah, it just caught him more fully, I would have said. If I was to boil it down to anything, just the contact was more substantial. Throughout all of these shows, how often are we saying, look, I'd like to avoid red cards as much as possible, but there are times when you look at something and think, oh, that's probably a red card. And sometimes your instinct is backed up by what you see in the replay afterwards. Sometimes it's not, fair enough. But we'll come back to the disallowed goal in a while. But Éanna Burke, that point, that rider over stuff. I mean, folks, get your comments in. Give us a more dramatic win and score in an All-Ireland final. Straight away, comments are coming in. Harry Ruddle a couple of years ago against Ballyhale Shamrocks. And yeah, that's obviously right up there at the top of the list. But for last-second scores, winners in a final, even last-second equalisers or whatever, get your comments in. Let us know what we saw from Éanna Burke.
Well, it was just fascinating to watch. And I think Cat O'Kane, who was covering the second game, sometimes when you're not working at a game, you're afforded the luxury, maybe taking out the phone and video and something. He captured it absolutely perfect. And there's obviously a puck out down. It broke in around Bernard Burke. There's so many elements to it. Bernard Burke, nearly in rugby style, cleared out a couple of lads. He just moved lads out of the way. Ball broke out to Éanna Burke.
Damien McGuinn hit it for Damien McGuinn was in the thick of it as well, wasn't he? Don't know if we've lost Michael there for a second. I'm just going to kick Michael out and hopefully he'll be able to come back in a second there. But yeah, in the middle of that ruck, I mean, my reading on it was that it was Damien McGlynn who was in the thick of it, and then the ball spilled out to Éanna Burke. And from there, I mean, I was reading his comments afterwards and I thought it was quite something. He said that, I probably didn't have the time to look. 60 minutes gone, I was out on my feet as well. I thought if it went wide, referee Sean Stack might blow it up after a minute. But just thanks be to God, the guys won it out of the ruck. I just had to hit it. In fairness, the wind was pulling it in as well. The stuff of dreams, but it hasn't really sunk in yet. And I mean, a couple of minutes before that, again, when they really needed a score, I think this might have put them 16-14 ahead. I'll just double check here. It was, yeah. He got the ball about 40 yards out, maybe not quite. Just kind of in phone box territory, and managed to turn and snipe the ball over the bar under huge pressure. And O'Loughlin Gaels were dying with their boots on as well. If you look at both of these scores late on in the game, there was just huge numbers of O'Loughlin Gaels players around them. So these lads were going all the way to the well, and it wasn't easy scores, obviously. Both of the scores, he was probably surrounded by 3 players. And that winning score from the sideline, how many touches did he have before he eventually got it into his hand while he's spinning around? I mean, the composure and the fact that he must have been out on his feet totally, and he was still able to stay aware. I would have said, Michael, that him lashing that ball over the bar from the sideline was probably, he had a general awareness of where he was on the pitch. He's probably been down in the park in Thomas's home pitch since he was a child, trying scores like that. And it was just partly on instinct, partly on the internal radar, knowing, well, if I'm on this part of the pitch, without having to think about it, just internal calculations going on, and he's just turning and lashing it over because he's probably doing it since he was an Ipper.
Yeah, probably couldn't have fallen to a better man, really, in the sense of, like, he had a snapshot earlier in the half from around centre forward with no space or no time on the ball as well. He's probably the quickest striker that they have, I would say. But everything about it was just beautiful. Like, they were never going to score. They were probably never going to score a winner where, you know, there were going to be someone on the front foot just because they were down a man and they were kind of under pressure. It was probably always going to have to be something incredible. And, you know, from an O'Loughlin's point of view, when you can see the keeper putting the hurl up and you know it's going over the bar, like it's so kind of sickening or anything. There was no doubt about it. But there were so many interesting facets to it. Damien McGlynn kind of getting on the ball, Bernard Burke clearing out, Éanna Burke having the ball in his hand for, I'd love to know how long he actually had the ball in his hand, like a millisecond. And if you look, amazingly, and it happened earlier in the game when Oisin Flannery kind of fumbled that ball when Thomas has had a goal chance, David Burke was the man on his shoulder, one of the men on his shoulder. David Burke was the man following Éanna Burke's strike in. He was on the 6-yard box when the ball was going over the bar. Like, just how he was able to do what he did and kept doing even in the final seconds of the game was absolutely amazing. But as regards like Rioter Rovers winners, I think the only difference between him and Harry Ruddle is that was the last puck of the game and it was all over. And his kind of moment of brilliance just went into the final whistle almost, and you're just in disbelief. Whereas Éanna Burke's, O'Loughlin's did have a chance to level, so it's not just that time for it to percolate a small bit, but it was absolutely amazing stuff.
Yeah, it was like real tension, nail-biting stuff, whereas, like you said, it was just disbelief. When Ruddle's ball went in, I think I just stood up and just went like that. Just could not accept what my eyes had just shown me. And then of course, later that day, Kilcoo, Robin, wasn't it Crokes that day as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just, it's just kind of one of those things you cannot understand what you're looking at. Richard Hogan says, Malloy was lucky, but David Burke made a meal of it. John Headshoulder should have got yellow for the push on Bulger. It was dangerous as any of the other tackles. Here he probably lucky too. Hurling 1, 2, 3, 4. Didn't like Éanna Burke when he took off his helmet trying to get Butler sent off. Laughable. Yeah, that was certainly not. Richie Hogan lifted his arm. Regan did not. How many more times do we have to make the Richie Hogan comparison, Shane? Move on. Well, actually, I didn't. There was a commentator who put that in, Joe, on this occasion. The push behind the goals was dangerous and stupid. Heary never really got into the game after that challenge. Regan was unlucky with his red card. I thought Heary had a brilliant first half. And I'd say it's to Thomas's credit, and maybe again back to the wind and how they used the wind in the second half. And I actually don't think, if they had the wind in the first half, I don't think that they would have gone on to win this game. But they managed to lessen the impact of the key men in the O'Loughlin Gaels team. So obviously the half backline and the backs overall, who scored 7 points from play for O'Loughlin's, were a huge part of what they were doing. But they didn't so much play into the hands of Paddy Deegan in the second half. Hugh Lawler and Mikey Butler, there was nothing happening in that full forward line for Thomas's in the first half. But when they went down to 14 men, Conor Cooney decided to go mano a mano into the full forward line, and he got a lot of change. He did really, really well. But if they weren't playing with that wind in the second half, I think it would have been harder to counter at pace. Like if they're trying to get that ball up the field with slow ball, with the wind slowing it up, I don't know if any of their forwards outnumbered to that level would have been able to get change. Like of those forwards, like who really made the same impact in the second half? And I suppose a couple of things. It shows you, again, you don't have to capitulate if you go down to 14 men, but it shows how you have to use that extra man. And O'Loughlin Gaels didn't use the extra man well. Generally, it was Jordan Malloy was left free. He carried the ball out and probably eventually just hit the ball, maybe a 60-40 ball to the forwards. It wasn't sticking. Whether you blame the ball or the forwards, I don't know. It's probably difficult to say exactly. but they never used the width of the pitch and tried to wear down these Thomas's lads even more. Like, they were out on their feet. Like, you know that free that Oisin Flannery won at the end? Like, the guy was flagging massively, but did brilliantly to win the free. Like, it was fantastic stuff. But if they had to work that ball around a little bit more, and you'd think with having 3 current county stars who played in the last 2 All-Ireland finals, that they probably would have had that bit more composure to sort of stretch Thomas's a little bit more. But Thomas has used it perfectly. Like, they used the wind. They knew how to use the extra man. They countered brilliantly.
Thomas has used the ball brilliantly in the second half, and they made some great moves at half time. Like Mikey Butler was as dangerous on the ball as Éanna Burke, you'd nearly say, in the first half. They both had a point apiece, and even when Burke kind of jumped him and pulled him to the ground there, he was trying to stop Mikey Butler from going forward under what was in O'Loughlin's puck out. Burke moved to centre forward definitely at the start of the second half, and as you say, to be honest with you, like, Conor Cooney was very poor by his standards in the first half, but he looked like a man possessed in the second half. And it was a case of, I'd say Kenneth Burke nearly said to him, like, definitely a couple of minutes into the second half anyway, like, you're going to have to stand up here. You're going to have to take on Hugh Lawler. We probably maybe skirted around him in the first half, put Oisin Flannery in on him just to try and put a bit of pace on him. And Flannery, in fairness, got Hugh Lawler on a yellow and probably maybe took away from a bit of his performance in that. But Cooney just went at him with every ball. And even that one that was disallowed for the third catch as well. He just took the game on, made some great catches as well. And a lot of lads needed to stand up down a man in personnel, and they did. Like, but I go back to David Burke a small bit here. David Burke was standing up when Thomas's were in big trouble. Like, he went in full forward at one stage on Hugh Lawler in the first half just to get his breath, I think, or he was just in there after an attack. Scored a lovely point, had a point on the board inside 11 minutes. Everything that they did good in the first half, he had his hands on, whether it was an assist, whether it was winning a free, whether it was scoring himself. Then a couple of minutes after James Regan gets put off, Burke puts over this outrageous point, opens the shoulders out around the middle of the field, like a real trademark David Burke point. He was coming back, hitting line balls. He was always an outlet no matter where the ball was in the pitch. He was foraging, he was putting in tackles, he was assisting, he was scoring. And this is a guy, like, being on the field is an accomplishment 9 months after doing a cruciate, let alone doing what he did throughout. I thought it was an incredible display of leadership. And I have to say as well, like, when the final whistle went, like, rather than soaking in his own personal glory, he was straight over to Mark Bergen. Like, literally 5 seconds after the final whistle, he was straight over to him. I saw him going straight into Mikey Butler as well. And that's probably a measure of the man too. And, like, of all lads that deserve a second All-Ireland club medal and to join the steam company like Shane Stapleton and those, you'd have to say it would be David Burke.
Brendan Quinn, have O'Loughlin Gaels a shot in an appeal over the ghost goal, similar to Glen and Croke's situation last year? I wouldn't think so at all. I don't think they'd go down that route. But, like, there's no doubt that ball was carried over the line. And people will say, oh, there's no conclusive proof there or whatever. But you can see that, like, it's midway down the thigh. Like, the goal line is, kind of right on the middle of his thigh. And he's holding the ball maybe just down past his family jewels. There's no way the ball wasn't in. So you can understand how, for example, Nigel Skean, who spoke afterwards, on I think it was on KCLR, why would he be so frustrated?
Oh, big time. Shane, like, listen, right? You're like, people talking about VAR and different things. We have technology in operation in Croke Park. Surely in 2024, Hawkeye should be able to tell whether points are gone through the post and whether a ball is gone over the line. Surely, like, in 2024, a good decade since the technology was brought in, advancements should have been made in Croke Park of all places. Whatever about this happening in a provincial venue, but for it to happen in the biggest club game of the year is a disgrace, really. You'd have to say. Now, did I think it was a goal in real time? I probably didn't. It's only when you're looking back. He kind of nearly carried the ball in, but that would have been a big change in the game had O'Loughlin's got that goal. And even for, like, Owen Wall's performance himself, maybe he would have ended up at 1-1 or 1-2 had the goal been allowed. The confidence it would bring. But like, surely at this stage, like, in GAHQ, we should have something in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Whatever about anything else, like, costs involved. Like, surely Hawkeye, like, at this stage we can, expand it to bring in whether a ball has gone over the line or even whether a ball has gone over the end line at this stage.
Yeah, I don't know how much I trust Hawkeye. Look, we've had recurring issues over the years. Remember the Galway game a few years ago, Croke Park, when a point was, they went back and reviewed a point and then changed the scoreline at half time. We've had situations that Barry Nash minor point against Galway back in, was that 2014 or something at this stage? We've had recurring issues. And I remember around 2019 or 2020, maybe even a year or so after that, asking somebody who has in-depth knowledge of Hawkeye and using Hawkeye in the GAA sense. And I remember asking the question, well, look, and this was on the back of, I think, Brian Hogan had caught, was it Lee Chin's pointed attempt in the All-Ireland semi-final in 2019? He'd caught it over the crossbar and brought it back in. Did it even happen twice in that game, or am I imagining?
Yes, yeah, twice, yeah.
So I kind of made the point, okay, so let's say the ball is 4 inches in diameter. I don't know if it is, but let's just say it for the sake of argument. And does Hawkeye detect when an object of 4 inches goes over the crossbar? And is that when it decides it's a point? And if that's the case, if I've got a ball in my hand, and let's say that's an extra half inch or whatever in width there, diameter, that if I put it over, the ball might still be half an inch in. But because my hand is also being measured, does that mean that Hawkeye has decided that it's a point? I just wonder how exact this is, because it's not like every ball is chipped up in relation to Hawkeye. So I really don't know if we can fully trust in Hawkeye at all.
Well, if you chat to Brian Hogan, he is convinced that neither of those two balls went over the bar in the All-Ireland semi-final. Like, absolutely convinced.
And
but
if we're playing $7,000 every time they use the Hawkeye system.
Yeah. Well, maybe like saying as well, like the Shawnee Bulger point too, that was, well, it wasn't well inside, but it was fairly well inside. Like, it's just, I just, there was a couple of kind of mad kind of things happened yesterday. That one you're saying about Fintan Burke's hand, and he'd probably have particularly big hands as well. Like, how do you judge on how much of the ball has gone over the line? Is it all gone over the line? There's variable factors, but surely at this stage of the day, with all the advances in technology, we should have something in place at GAA HQ to make sure that these kind of things can't happen. And it's funny, well, it's not funny, but Brian Hogan didn't do media after with like all the print journalists. He just did media with GAA.ie, who are not going to ask him about the most controversial incident in the game. Do you know what I mean? And I know he was very disappointed, and I could tell by his body language, and I could tell he was nearly close to tears in that interview. But I do think you have to front up, and you have to front up in good and bad, and talk to the media or talk to the press, even if it's only for 2 minutes. So I think they missed a bit of a step there, because I think you just have to kind of front up when you win, and you have to front up when you lose. And everyone would have wanted to ask Brian about the goal situation and what he thought of it. And there wouldn't have been much more conversation after that. So I do think that was bad form as well.
Yeah, they used Conor Cooney as a target man the second half, which was very successful. Richard Hogan says, hurling 1, 2, 3, 4. Lads, watch the game back. Deegan was on the ball 14 times in the second half. Not sure how he wasn't in the game, Shane. Okay, fair point. But, like, did he get both of his points in the first half? Was he going forward with the ball? Like, yes, he was on the ball, but I think at times probably in very deep areas in the second half. I'm not saying he played bad by any stretch of the imagination. No, and he had that half goal chance. It probably just didn't come down to him quick enough. But I would have said that he was more influential in the first half and across the board. And it's not just singling him out, but the key players for O'Loughlin Gaels were far quieter in the second half than they had been in the first half, which is to Thomas's credit.
Yeah, Deegan was on the ball a good bit in the second half, but it was in different types of positions, and it was in pressurised situations. In the first half, he was probably on the ball a good bit less. But for some reason, and it is a bit mystifying, that Thomas has left him free in the first half with a breeze at his back. Like, that was particularly strange.
They're hoping to play around him, aren't they?
Yeah. One thing playing around him, but like where they were putting the ball, they were never going to play around him. They were always going to be, they were just lobbing ball into the positions where he was. Whereas in the second half,
because of the wind as well, like the ball is holding up. So if you're a sweeper, it's a bit easier to anticipate because it's not going to bypass you as quickly.
Yeah, but it doesn't hold up if you're playing it out like that. If you're playing it out to the two flanks, you know what I mean? And even like Paddy Deegan was frustrated near the end. I remember an incident with Damien Finnerty, the midfielder, who was probably a foot smaller than him and probably about 10 or 15 kg lighter than him. And he was annoying him. And they had frustrated Deegan to that point, because Deegan wants to be on the ball, wants to be on the front foot. He pushed up a fair bit. Thought Thomas's were clever in who they left free at times as well. Tony Forrester was free for a few minutes. Even Jordan Malloy was free at different stages as well. They just made sure that, I would say, the main men on the O'Loughlin side were not able to dictate affairs like they did in the second half. And like when you would go down through it, like what did they get out of their forward line? Owen O'Shea was scoreless, Owen Wall was scoreless, Luke Hogan was scoreless. 3 out of their 6 forwards weren't on the mark. And I suppose that's probably been the worry all year. Would O'Loughlin's have the firepower? They were kind of assisted by their defence throughout, and even up until half-time, they were well assisted by their defence. But when their defence was kind of shut down and weren't allowed kind of drive forward and score from big distances, the well probably ran dry somewhat up front. And you could kind of, with 10 or 15 minutes to go, I would say the writing was probably on the wall. Thomas's had really, really turned the tide. Like if you look at the hook block tackle count, I'd say O'Loughlin's were all over it in the first half. They were all over Thomas's, getting blocks in, getting hooks in. Thomas has massively upped their game, you'd have to say, when James Regan went off. And I think David Burke put it well. He said, when James went off, we knew it was now or never. And in fairness to them, they seized the day when the moment was there in front of them, having beaten, the red hot favourites going into it in the semi-final in Ballygunner. You had to back that up in the final, and they backed it up when the need was the greatest.
Yeah, you'd have to say that the umpires got this one wrong. Their position wasn't good enough. Now, I know it can be tough and all this kind of stuff, and even you can see a ball being lashed and you're in the general direction, and maybe you kind of brace yourself or jump back or whatever, but that's the real issue here, isn't it? That somebody didn't have a good position to spot what was going on because the ball was over the line.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like she'd have to say it, like the umpire was standing beside John Head when he pushed Shawnee Bulger over the horn. He's standing right beside it. Like, so it's unforgivable really when you're there looking at it. Like you're looking at the ball was stopped on the line. You're looking at it and you're surely looking at where the ball is, and you're surely seeing that his momentum takes him back over the line. Plus as well, Shane, like, and I know it's happened the odd time where the referee has used the big screen. Like if you looked at the big screen after, like it was fairly obvious, or if you went to someone on TG Catter and it could take 30 seconds, but you'd know fairly quickly whether it was a goal or not. These kind of incidents decide games. Now, Thomas's were the better team for the second half and fully deserved their win, but there's just so many incidents that would leave O'Loughlin's hard done by. Thomas's would have been hard done by if they hadn't won as well, because they would have felt like they should have finished the game with 15 men, and James Regan definitely shouldn't have been sent off.
Do you know what? Let's rewind a couple of months to when I think all the county championships were over at this stage, but the most recent club power rankings we did. Let's have a little bit of a look here and see how badly we got it. We had Ballygunner, we had Thomas's too.
Yeah, well, there you go. We were looking at potentially who was going to be in an All Ireland semi final, and we still had them as. I think that might have been an earlier one. I think Loughrea were bumped up for a later one, but we'll go with the one that makes us look a bit better.
Yeah, and the Piercing, obviously they didn't get to Munster final. Schlockneil, they didn't win Ulster. O'Loughlin's, okay, we had them at 5. To have Thomas's at number 2. Consider like everyone in the country had Ballygunner as the favourites. To be fair, we're not going to be too hard on ourselves there. And more's the credit to St Thomas's that both games in fairly nasty conditions, they've gone and pulled it out of the bag against a team that's just stacked with county stars.
Yeah, and they've pulled it out of the bag when there was plenty of adversity and plenty going against them. The similarities even between, like, a lot of things went wrong for Thomas's, particularly in the first half with the amount of chances that they had and they didn't take. And same with Glen in the second game. Thomas's definitely didn't save their best performance to last. Their best performance was in the All-Ireland semi-final, but they found a way when the finish line was there. They found a way to get over the line. And just a word on Mark Bergen, Shane, as well. Obviously, he scored the winning point in the Leinster final into the Canal end, and it's a very disappointing one for him and a very sore one for him. Obviously missed the free at the end of that colleges final against De La Salle kind of many moons ago. But like, what a season he's had for O'Loughlin Gaels to lead them to Kilkenny glory and lead them to Leinster glory as well. I don't know about you, but I was thinking it was probably like 50-50 taking the free, like just with conditions and things like that. It was a very, very tough one. Stephen Murphy had scored one from the far side of the pitch, but he'd also well dropped one short from the far side of the pitch from a similar position as well. So it was always going to be a really, really difficult one to level, but he can stand tall for the year he's had for O'Loughlin's. He's absolutely immense.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll get on the club team of the year. But yeah, I did think this is a low percentage chance. And I was kind of wondering, would Gerald Kelly take it? Again, though, like, Mark Bergen's probably the leader of that team, certainly the leader of the forward line. So you can understand why he'd say, no, this is on me. I'm the ball striker around here. And look, it didn't go over, but like, I think the vast majority of people would have missed that in that situation. You can't really criticize him at all against that wind. Do you know
you mentioned Gerald Kelly there? I'd say you meant to say Stephen Murphy, but just on Gerald Kelly,
yes,
like the save he made from Luke Hogan was absolutely brilliant, and it was in the 40th minute, I think, 39th minute. He saved it, but also deflected it out the pitch, and then a minute later he flies over a monster of a free with the cool tech in his hand, and he goes over to Luke Hogan and gives it the big one after scoring the point. If O'Loughlin's had come out 1 point winners, I'm sure he would have had someone coming into him maybe to give it the big one at the final whistle. But just an amazing save there, and that was a big kind of a swing as well. O'Loughlin Gaels had a couple of chances for goals. Did Thomas's really have they didn't have a really good goal chance in the sense that they had a shot on goal. They had a couple of half chances. The one with Oisin Flannery, if he got the ball, you'd imagine there was two men on the shoulder. It was probably a high percentage chance of a goal. But O'Loughlin's really needed a goal for a couple of the chances that they converted, and it's a bit of a sickener. You've played on a team and been on a field when you've had a couple of chances, you haven't kind of converted them. You kind of half start thinking, oh, is it our day or is it not our day? And unfortunately for O'Loughlin's, it wasn't their day.
There's probably a few decisions that I'd be frustrated about if I was O'Loughlin. So the goal is the most obvious one. That Ian Burke probably should have got a second yellow in the 42nd minute. A couple of people have commented in here about a situation when a sideline was taken from St Thomas's, and it certainly didn't go as far as it should have gone, and that wasn't blown up as well. So I think, yes, you could look at the red card decisions and say they went more in O'Loughlin Gaels' favour, but there were a few things that they can feel a little bit frustrated by.
The only the one on that sideline is David Burke missed the connection with the sideline completely. As long as the players are 13 yards away when the player goes to hit the sideline, he went to hit the sideline. He obviously hit it again, but I think it's from the initial strike or the initial take, so you can actually go closer thereafter. So I wouldn't have an issue with that one. But there are so many decisions, so many talking points. It was an unbelievable game, and you were right on your. I was going to say you were on your seat until the end. You were out of your seat, until the very, very end, because you weren't sure what way it was going to go.
Yeah, and certainly a word for all the players that participated in the 2013 final for St Thomas's that have survived until this day. I mean, Kenneth Burke was on the team back in 2013, and now he's the manager. And a point you were making yesterday at Croke Park, as we were chatting afterwards, was, his dad was the manager that time. He's now the son is the manager this time. Has that happened before? And you were looking into the annals and you couldn't find any proof of it. And I'll come back to that in a second. But just the players that played that day that also played yesterday: Davy Burke, Cathal Burke, Shane Cooney, Conor Cooney, James Regan, Bernard Burke, Éanna Burke. Like, fair play to those guys 11 years on to still be doing it and be kings of the land.
Yeah, it's some going that, because that must seem like a lifetime ago, and they've had plenty of heartache along the way. Éanna Burke scores the winner yesterday, missed the 2019 final, obviously, with a bit of a health scare. Fintan Burke went in full back on Colin Fennelly when things were going very, very badly for Thomas. Ends up doing his cruciate. 5 years later, he's at the edge of the square. He had a big strapping on his hamstring again. Like, he was obviously under pressure too. A good few people saying that Luke Hogan got the better of that battle. I'm not sure, as regards.
I thought he was good now. I thought, the one thing I would have said, if you contrast Hogan with what happened at the other end for Thomas's in the first half is, and I know that the wind and all changes the factors, but the ball stuck. When that ball went up, Hogan was able to recycle it. He got himself a point. So I would have thought he did quite well. I'm not saying he won the battle per se, but I thought he was a very good focal point.
I would have said, particularly in the first half, and he sprayed a couple of lovely balls across the pitch. I'd say Burke had the better of it in the second half, though. I thought Burke had a strong second half, and even he caught a great ball. He caught a great ball at the edge of the square at one stage. Keane Matney's probably a hugely underrated defender at this stage. Brilliant, a lovely player. Remember that catch underneath the Cusick? Brilliant, going backwards, kind of class. And thought Cathal Burke had a huge second half too. you go down through the Thomases 1 to 15, and you're just like, Victor Manzo was taken off after scoring a second point, and I thought he was very effective at times as well.
He
And
was getting his calf rubbed when he came off. Maybe it's to do with that.
Yeah, and even like David Sherry going off, like we know the injuries kind of undone Thomas's last year against Dunley. They probably had the bench to come in. Even Bernard Burke, who started in that 13 final, coming in. I definitely remember him getting one kind of stick pass away and even performing that kind of clear out for that kind of winning score. Like like there was no one better in that situation than to make whatever bit of space was available for Éanna Burke. Bernard Burke definitely did, but yeah, amazing. And just like the Kenneth Burke, John Burke one is mad. Like John Burke leads Thomas's with his 6 sons all involved in 2013. 11 years later, his oldest son Kenneth leads Thomas's with four brothers involved. Crazy. And like just going down through the annals of GA history, like correct me if I'm wrong, or the viewers might. I haven't been able to find any club All-Ireland hurling winning team or football team where that has happened, or even, at All-Ireland senior level, county level. I cannot think of offhand where that's happened in hurling or football either. It's an amazing thing, really. And like, I know Eddie Brennan tweeted yesterday, like what a hurling family the Burkes are, and what a contribution they've made to Galway and beyond at this stage. Davy leads them to the promised land. Galway in 2017. Hadn't won an Ireland in 29 years. He's still going strong 7 years later, when most people, and me and you included, were questioning would he be able to get back to the levels he was at. He's probably surpassed the levels he was at. It's phenomenal, really.
Yeah, Martin Furlong says the records. So expand on that. The records, what sort of record would you be talking about there? Cian Mahoney was very good, so was Crater. And like, he was very good against Desi Hutchinson.
Brilliant.
Hutchinson still made an impact, but Cian Mahoney did as well as you're going to do in those situations. So as far as I'm concerned, he'll be on the club team of the year. Joe Butler, in fairness to you two guys, you read the game well in your read the game well in your preview. 1 point win for either team was your prediction on Thursday. You get some things right.
Good man, Joe.
I said a draw.
Yeah, I thought O'Loughlin's would win after extra time, and it was finish on the day yesterday. It would even went to penalties, which would have been an interesting one. It's kind of amazing that neither game went to extra time after, really, because you're kind of thinking there was nothing to separate the two of them. But thanks, Joe. We do get the odd thing right, in fairness. A hard day for Joe and O'Loughlin's though, like, because it's just like, what's the road like back to Croke Park? Like, the road back to Croke Park is filled with roadblocks. You'd imagine for O'Loughlin's, like, they're getting out, and not being smart, like getting out of Kilkenny anytime in the next 5 years is anything but a guarantee. Do you know what I mean? So that's why you have to really kind of take the chances when they were there. And I think there'd be, like, for the likes of Mikey Butler and Paddy Deegan and Hugh Lawler, having lost 3 All-Irelands in Croke Park in the last, 18 months, I think this one might hurt most, because they were there and it was kind of within touching distance, and they just couldn't kind of push on when it was there to be won. Yeah,
Mikey Butler wearing Limerick shorts for the game. And we've seen Tony Kelly wear Kilkenny shorts before, because obviously they go with the Ballier jersey. I don't mind it so much, do you?
No, we'd have a lot of...
the shorts are normally very slick.
Yeah, it's usually harder to get club shorts that are kind of up to the same standard or up to the same spec, shall we say, as the inter-county shorts.
As figure hugging, maybe.
Maybe so. But like, a lot of the Burr lads I know would wear Mayo shorts, and same as Tony Kelly wearing Kilkenny. It's just a kind of a peculiar one when Limerick have beaten him in the last 2 All-Ireland finals. It obviously, some people hopple all over it, saying it like he's trying to be Sean Finn and this kind of crack, and this proves my point that he wears Sean Finn pajamas and that kind of crack. But I don't think it's totally unusual. Maybe in an All-Ireland final, it's a bit unusual now. You'd imagine someone from the club would have said, "Hey, listen, can you wear O'Loughlin's gear for the day?" I don't know if he's been wearing them the whole way through the year. I interviewed him after the Mount Leinster game, and I didn't notice anyway.
Oh, you would have spotted it too.
It's the sort of thing you would spot with the crest, though. With the crest on the tie, it's the sort of thing you would spot, in fairness. But it's a mad little aside to what was a mad day and a truly mad game.
Yeah, Martin Furlong, Bobby Nicky and Billy Rackard won an All-Ireland with Wexford in the 50s, closest I can think of. Joe Butler says the likelihood is that Ballyhale will probably be favourites in Kilkenny next year when they have their 4 or 5 players back. Obviously building up the opposition there, Joe, the way we like to see it done. And to be fair, the other thing for Ballyhale is they've finally had a bit of a winter break, and hunger is a great sauce.
Oh, yeah. Like, by all accounts, from what I'm hearing, Joey Holden is the only one that won't be back, and the rest of them will be back. The likes of Brian Cody, Joey Cuddy, etc. They've Pat Hoban has stepped aside, and Jimmy Marr, I think it is, and Niall Lacey are involved now. There won't be any, lack of hunger. Interesting one I didn't say on last week's show as well. You're talking about new managers and different people are in. The great Tommy Walsh has hung up his club hurl at senior level and is now coaching Tullaroan. And okay. I'd say it's no coincidence that Porrick maybe has stepped back now. I was chatting to Porrick even a couple of weeks ago. He just said he wanted to give the club a couple of his best years, just the club. So they'll be making a massive run in the next couple of years. That's going to be interesting. Like Tommy will be hurling every ball on the sideline. It'll be gas if they're in a big game. I don't think he'd be one for sitting down watching it from afar or anything like that.
No, I wouldn't think so. So then the Club All-Ireland football final will be coming. There's lots more hurling to talk about. I was at the Walsh Cup there on Saturday. So yeah, there's loads to talk about there. But the final of the football, Glen 2-10, Brigid's 1-12. As that second half was wearing on, you were thinking, okay, Glen, who had obviously been burned by losing the year beforehand to Kilmacud Crokes, you're just looking at how they're squandering so many chances. And early in the second half, I think it was, let me just double check once again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They only scored 2 of their first 14 chances in the second half. Whereas on the flip side, from their first 4 chances, St Brigid's had scored 1-3. So, and they put themselves in a 1-11 to 1-7 winning position, 4 points ahead with like 5 minutes of normal time to go, plus another maybe 6 or 7 of injury time. And you just thought, there's no way Glen can dig themselves out of this hole because they're burying themselves one shovelful at a time, but they pulled it out of the bag.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like I was down in the media centre after the game, and Malachy O'Rourke was just there, and his arm kind of out like this. He was like, I'd say it's a similar position he was at around 1 or 2 in the morning, just soaking it all in. But I wouldn't say he could believe what was after happening because so many things had gone wrong for them. And he said it. He said they saved the worst until last. Like it was by far their worst performance of the last 3 years, probably since he took over. So many things went wrong. So many shots taken from positions that were outside probably that scored arc, lower percentage shots. But there was a couple of kind of moves that really turned the game. Like Malachy even said that they at times they left Michael Warnock out to dry on Ben O'Carroll, and they did. There was acres of space. There was acres of space in front of him, and you were kind of saying there just beforehand, like why wasn't Ryan Dugan on him from the start? He obviously had the hammer that he pulled against Kilmacud. He was a doubt to even play. And then he went over on Ben O'Carroll, and just for 10 or 15 minutes when they needed to stay in the game and make sure that they didn't concede another big score, Dugan just got a bit tighter on O'Carroll and just kept him out of the game a small bit. And he did it for long enough for Conor Glass to go and just do something that totally broke open the game completely. And it was brilliant because it was a turnover underneath the Cusick. They'd no right to win the ball. Then it was a quick little lob free to Glass, who wasn't even looking at the ball. He takes the ball in his chest, sidestep, and he just said after, he obviously, and you'd forget it because it seems like so long ago, but he had the goal chance for the infamous 45 against Crokes last year. Remember, he tried to side foot it into the net, and they got back and pushed it out and into 45, and all the hoo-ha happened. But by God, did he put his toe through that the other day or yesterday. Laces the whole shebang, the whole boot nearly went with it, and he put the keeper the wrong way as well. And you just thought when that went in, Glen are after putting himself in a position here, the 58th minute, they're after, did that draw them level? I think it did.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, that drew them level, and you're just thinking, as bad as they've played, the know-how of how to get over the line will surely kick in. Then all of a sudden, Emmett Bradley kicks a free, Colin McGuckian kicks a point, but then Brigid's fire back again, and they get to it in one of them. And obviously Shane Conan had that missed free at the end. But I remember just saying, and you were beside me, and Gordon Manning was the other side of me, I just said to him, he's probably just fouled him in just the right spot, just outside the 45. It leaves it. It's far from a done deal. It's a little bit uncertain with the breeze. That free kind of tail wide. And then there was the symmetry with last year's game where you're thinking, have Glen got 60 men on the pitch here for this last free? Is there anything funny going on or like that? It was just a crazy finale and a mad way for Glen to win it. But just on Conor Glass, he scored a point in the first half where he just breezing past lads. Like, I couldn't believe it. Bridges threw a couple of kickouts down on top of him, particularly near the end of the game, where, like, I know it's a basic tactic, keep the ball away from the best player on the other team. There were times yesterday where he was just so far better than anybody else in the field. Like, he was actually standing head and shoulders above nearly everyone on the field at times. And that goal will never be forgotten, because that was the turning point. That was what they needed to kind of breathe life into their challenge.
So Brigid's had their first wide in injury time of the first half, their second wide in injury time of the second half. They had 19 chances. Well, just in terms of scoring conversion, they had a 68% scoring efficiency throughout the game. Glen had 39%. And if you were told that before the game, you'd be saying there's only one winner of this game, and probably by some distance. Now, I know
just on that, Shano, I'd love even privately for the performance analysis or the stats men just to even get onto us privately. I'd love to know what the lowest scoring percentage to win has been in a big game, because less than 50 would nearly be unheard of. Less than 40, my God, you just don't win games with that sort of efficiency. So if lads got onto us privately, and even just, I'd be fascinated to know.
Yeah, like from my point of view, you're probably looking, you want to get, I'm going to say 62.5% because it's 5/8. You want to be getting around that percentage. I think over 60%, you're probably doing pretty good. And I'm talking about in either code here. I suppose, Joe, I also wanted to mention Conor Glass's 45 in the second half after about 36 minutes. The way he kicked through it, it was a bit like a modern soccer player kicking a free kick. It was like, you know, the way they sort of say Ronaldo hits it on the valve or whatever. But the way he kicked it, it was very unorthodox but stylish at the same time. It's quite different to what you'd normally see.
And it was badly needed as well. Are you saying there's a potential for him to follow Rory Beggan and Mark Jackson and the boys out to the NFL?
Well, I'm just wondering what's the hold-up at this stage. Did you see when that Rory Beggan video was released the other day from NFL UK about the international player pathway, and they had a video package done of Rory Beggan, and they'd sort of colorized some scores that he'd gotten for Monaghan in big games or whatever. It's just really cool to see a GA player being put out there like that, and probably to millions of followers.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it was very impressive looking, and just like, it's amazing the dream that they're chasing at the minute. And I know Vinny Corey was kind of still hoping that he would have him available. He said they have him available for the minute was what he said. But I was very impressed with the one thing I've kind of questioned to you a couple of times is how quick could he do it? I know they probably pulled out the best kicks, but it looked pretty damn impressive how quick he was able to do it while still maintaining the accuracy, while still maintaining the length, with a ball that's totally unfamiliar to him, obviously, as well.
Yeah, and I was watching back the highlights of the Kansas City Chiefs against the Buffalo Bills last night. And the Buffalo Bills, you know, who know Harte like nobody else in terms of Super Bowls and American football history, they had a kicker let them down again, wide right. And, you know, now that we're talking about Rory Beggan, I'm thinking, how would he do in those situations? And, you know, pressure obviously makes things totally different. He's used to pressure on a GAA scale. But I suppose we're really kind of imagining the best case scenario that he's in a situation in front of a couple of 100 million people, whatever it might be, taking on a massive kick. That would just be so cool for someone coming from a GA background. How Glen negotiated the black card period when they were behind was quite impressive. And Cathal Mulholland coming back on just after they'd scored the goal. It was like, you see that film Dodgeball? You know the one with...
obviously, yeah.
Yeah. People out there, I don't know if you've seen it. Vince Vaughn is in it. And
one of the great comedies. I'd say they all would have seen it, yeah.
But you remember when they're just about to lose the final to Ben Stiller and all the other clowns on the other team. And all of a sudden, it's like, I think Ben Stiller or one of the baddies will say, throws the ball and it's caught. And there's a huge turnaround from what are they called again? The average Joes just being about to get hammered. To all of a sudden, they've extra players back on the court. The other team has lost a couple of players. And it's like just a big switcheroo all of a second. So the Glen, they get a goal, massive switcheroo, player back onto the field. He does a block down, you know.
Yeah, immediately, nearly immediately. And that
was just like that whole average Joe switcheroo.
Yeah, anyway. The old switcheroo, the classic switcheroo. But it is like you're saying, from the state of mind of Bridget's, they're holding a 3-point lead, 15-14. They have have possession underneath the Cusick about 50 yards out. 10 seconds later, it's a draw. and it's 15 on 15. Do you know what I mean? It's like everything just changed. That's a very good analogy. I'll give you that. Everything changed within, a split second.
And did you, Michael Warnock being taken off Ben O'Carroll? Look, I've said to you, and I probably even said it to you at the stadium yesterday, I think he's just such a really good player. But also him being taken off Ben Carroll meant he got up the field to have a couple of scoring chances. One of those was just before the goal, like a brilliant point when he was just out, probably at the edge of the D on the right-hand side of it, just curled over a beauty of a bomb. And now he had another shot that he mishit, pretty poorly a little bit later, but it freed him to show off the bit of football he has as well. So it kind of worked out doubly that Dugan probably did a bit better. And Ben O'Carroll absolutely emptied the tank. I don't know what part of it was. Like, he was just out on his feet, like a sensational performance from him. I certainly don't want to play that down.
Yeah, and I was looking at him even after 20 minutes, like he was down kind of on his hunkers at different stages, because you're just, like, when you're in that position, like, he was always making a run for the first time ball to go in, or the little dink pass to go in, and you just keep making those runs over and over again, and he went the length of the field for that goal chance. So if he put it anywhere but at the keeper's feet, you probably think it's going in. But a phenomenal performance, and like, he's only in his early 20s. I think he's 22. Like, we're going to hear so much more about him over the guts of the next decade. Just have to come back to Ryan Dugan as well. I think it's very interesting how Ryan Dugan is kind of dealt with by Malachy O'Rourke. So I don't know if you were aware, Dugan doesn't be around, like, is not in Ireland from January to June every year. He works as a software developer and is basically all around the world. And like, in a time of like player charters, and if you're away for 2 months during the summer, you're not involved with our squad. Here's a guy who was nominated for Club Footballer of the Year last year, on the Club Team of the Year last year, and Malachy O'Rourke basically trusts him to look after himself for those 6 months and come back in the condition that he needs to come back in. Like, to me, it just goes to show you that there's no one-size-fits-all approach when you're over a GA team. And Malachy even said he's no problem with lads going travelling as long as they go at the right time. He said they have to have lives outside of the pitch. But if the best are doing this, and the best are, it's okay to go off. It's okay for Dermot Burns to go off for 2 months to Dubai as reigning hurler of the year when the season is in full flow. It's okay for Brian Howard to only come back in February from an 18-week kind of sojourn in Southeast Asia. It's okay for Ryan Dugan to be away for 6 months. I think a lot of other clubs and counties should realise that, not to kind of hold people back at all. If you play ball with people, generally, most types will play ball with you, and they will repay your trust in spades.
Yeah, well, even Desi Farrell was talking about how some of his players won't be seen that much during the league. And, we've seen, did you mention it there, Dermot Burns going off to somewhere in the Middle East last year for a while, coming back and then slipping back in. Like, all these players have the training done. The muscle memory is there. They just have to come back and top up. So if you're going to try and shut down someone's life year after year after year, they're going to get sick of it. So if you can allow them to have that freshness, go off and have a bit of a life at the same time, you're going to find a nice balance. Carroll Kane did a very good tweet about the captain, Conor Carville. You can check out his piece at the Irish News, or any pieces that Carroll does there. He goes, Conor Carville is captain, All-Ireland club title, Ulster club title by 2, Derry Senior Football Championship by 3, Hogan Cup by 1, McCrory Cup by 1. Others will have the medals, but not sure anyone else has ever been captain for the whole lot before. A picture by Mark Marlowe there. That is quite an incredible achievement for Conor Carville.
That's outstanding. Some lads just, even from a young age, you can just see they have certain characteristics or qualities that just make him a captain. And don't always have to be the best footballer. Far from it. It's just, and like, you could see the pain all over his face coming off the pitch yesterday. Not sure if it was a calf or a hamstring or what he did, but he knew kind of straight away that he was in bother. And even I just thought he was very cute as well. He stayed down in the middle of the pitch and made sure that Glen got lots of time to warm someone up and get them on the pitch. There was none of this kind of trying to play on or like that. I thought he was very cute about it as well. But unbelievable leadership qualities, and that's a fair resume. And just on the Glen as well, like, to have not won a county title until 3 years ago, now have 3 Derry titles, 2 Ulster titles, and now the All-Ireland title. Yeah, and listen, it all probably coincides with Conor Glass going back into the country, you'd have to say as well. And you wonder, will this be, another kind of springboard to help Derry get a bit closer to the All-Ireland as well? Fascinating to see how they're going to be managed over the next while and when they actually come back and play with Derry, because they're in Division 1 now. They
definitely went straight back last year. Do you remember that? They were almost in the following week.
Yeah, didn't Glass end up with a little nick on his hamstring not long after that. I think you played a long game there. I'd probably be giving them 3 or 4 weeks off and then let them come back in towards the round 3, 4 of the league, maybe something like that. But it's going to be fascinating to see how Mickey Harte kind of deals with them, and if this is any sort of a springboard to help them go and win the All-Ireland maybe later in the year.
Okay, just a reminder that that the audio podcast is at patreon.com/OurGame. Also, if you want to go for any coaching clinics or club fundraiser, email us at events@ourgame.ie and we'll sort you out there. Crackety Ash says, Burns missed the league, made no difference to him, but the likes of O'Donnell never playing league shows come the early rounds of the championship. Would you agree with that? I presume he's talking about Shane O'Donnell. To me, it's just keep him right for the championship. There's certain players, you're like, if they've got a bit of an injury profile, and, obviously he would have had those concussions, you just want them right for championship. You know that they're going to, they have everything required. Just as long as they're right, they're going to produce for you.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't agree with that at all, to be honest with you. And there's bound to I don't think O'Donnell has shown any rust really coming in. I remember the game again when he was over at Harvard and he came in and ran wreck against Waterford in his first game back down in Walsh Park. So I wouldn't agree with that. And his form the last 2 years in championship has been probably the best it's ever been. So I wouldn't agree with that now, Crack, in fairness. That means it's probably some sort of a satire tweet coming my direction.
Yeah, no doubt. So we might just talk about a couple of the other games that we saw over the weekend. And I'll just give the scoreline of the game that I saw at Parnell Park. Galway 124, Dublin 17 points. This was the semi-final of the Walsh Cup. The other semi-final that I more read about was Wexford 18 points, Kilkenny 2-11. That was in Callan. So it's going to mean a Galway against Wexford final, Keith Rossiter against Henry Shefflin. Where have we heard that one before? But maybe you want to ask me a little bit about the Dublin-Galway game.
Yeah, no, just interested. What sort of new personnel are we seeing with Galway? Are we seeing the same personnel in different positions, or what kind of way are they kind of shaping up? Or have you noticed many differences, we'll say, fundamental differences between this year and last year?
Well, I suppose one of the things that stood out to me was just the rejigging of positions. I suppose they want to get a bit more mobility. Certainly the spine, they're looking to really get a strong spine. And by that, I'm saying Gerard McInerney's still full back. So maybe Daithí Burke will come back in there. Maybe he'll go centre back. We'll see. But they've got power with him at full back. Keenan Fahy, rather than being in the half-forward line, he's now centre back. And he would have done a lot of his hurling with Ardrahan there. So that's not a total shock. In the middle of midfield, Pádraig Mannion was playing. Now, I'm not quite sure, based on this Walsh Cup game in the middle of January, whether it totally suited him. But again, you're looking at a physical presence there. And then also, scattered around that, a half-back line that includes Ronan Glennon, who you'd probably think of more as a midfielder or a wing forward, but certainly an attacking type player, a hurler.
Can I just ask you, do you not think backs is, I don't think in defence is where Galway's problem is. I wouldn't be moving back Ronan Glennon and Keenan Fahy into defence. I think have they not got surplus of players when you look at Jack Grealish, Fintan Burke, Gerard McInerney, Daithí Burke, Pádraig Mannion, even I would have thought they need to be moving players up the pitch. I wouldn't. Maybe it just needs must at this time of the year.
Well, Conor Whelan, Cathal Mannion, Kevin Cooney, these are all players that didn't play in this game that you could add in. And I feel like there's someone very obvious, Conor Cooney.
Evan Nyland, Brian Concannon.
Yeah, Concannon didn't play either, but like Evan Nyland, he scored 17 points from 17 shots.
Go ahead, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, just to go back to Ronan Glennon playing in the half-back line, I mean, maybe they're thinking we need a scoring threat from the half-back line now because everybody is dropping deep into their own half. This is nothing new. So we need someone who can now score from 90 yards out or 80 yards out to draw the opposition out. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, but teams are looking at Limerick and they're seeing them score, or Diarmaid Byrne score heavily. But you just want someone that forces the opposition to come out a little bit. So maybe it's something to do with that. And Donal O'Shea was playing in midfield. Now, we would have probably thought of Donal O'Shea as more of a forward and perhaps even an inside forward. But he was playing around the middle of the field. And I suppose his hurling acumen, he's just a very smart hurler, very good ball player. But then making sure he wins enough ball in the middle of the field, I suppose, is part of the challenge there. But it was kind of interesting the way they've rejigged a little bit there. John Cooney played wing forward. People probably remember him, the left-hander. Did he score an unbelievable top corner goal against against Dublin in the under-20 a couple of years ago? Possibly.
Not ringing a bell to me now.
Yeah, I'm sure someone will comment in and let us know. But he looked good at times. He was probably more so in the first half. He was wing forward and then he went into the full forward line at times. Evan Nyland was floating around. He was named number 13, but he was playing a bit further out the field and he was just floating really nicely. And Dublin probably could have done a better job of sticking to him. But the player that really stood out to me was Declan McLaughlin. He's from Portumna. Inside forward, small, diminutive type. I suppose if you're to reflect on games over the weekend, whose size profile would he be like? Probably not far off Oisin Flannery. That sort of a size profile. I don't know if he has more muscle mass or not. But the ball stuck to him. When it went in, it stuck to him. So I think he's one of these players that and obviously Shefflin has been trying to bring through some of the younger players in the last year or so. We kind of talked about that in some of the big games. Maybe he brought in too many younger light lads against Limerick. But the good positive I'd say about McLaughlin is he's a small guy. It was a dirty old rotten day. Very few players was the ball sticking to up front and it stuck to him and he scored 3 points. So I'd be thinking that's, full marks for Declan McLaughlin.
And that's after getting a bag of goals the last day as well. And he was obviously came on and got that point against Kilkenny last year to draw it down in O'Loughlin Park that left them kind of out for the under-20s at that weekend when they played Offaly as well. But they need kind of new faces like that to step up. They've got a load of guys that won All-Ireland minors and have maybe a couple good few lads that played in All-Ireland under-20s. And it's just a matter of kind of kicking on at this stage. But he's definitely the sort of lad that has a profile where you're thinking, well, you'd say he's already trained on from last year now, and he's going to get plenty of time. He's getting loads of game time now. And the fact that there's a cohort, Thomas's lads, that won't be back for probably a month or 6 weeks now, will leave a fair few more opportunities for him and his likes as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Galway won this game by 10 points, but were they 10 points the better team? Well, I suppose how they used the ball and finished their chances. Jason Flynn got a nice goal, and there was a little bit of hesitation in the Dublin defence when a ball broke, and a couple of players worked the ball nicely. I think Martin McManus was one of the ones who worked the ball nicely. Tom Monaghan was the other, and Flynn finished his goal quite well. But both teams created 39 chances. It's just Dublin didn't put away their efforts. They had 16 wides. They missed 3 goal chances. 2 were absolutely gilt-edged chances that you'd always expect Cian O'Sullivan to put away. So that's not to criticise his performance because he scored a few frees, he popped over a couple from play, but there were gilt-edged chances when it's, someone of his quality. And I'm talking about going through one-on-one type stuff. So that kind of extended the deficit between the two teams when you're not converting your chances like that. Paul Crummy came in at the start of the second half, started winning ball and popping ball off to his teammates straight away. And then they didn't get the ball to him for about another 25 minutes when he caught a high ball, diagonal ball going in and knocked it off the crossbar. Now, he could have been done for steps, but Dublin just, in the first half, they struggled to get the ball inside. Sorry, they got the ball inside, but it did not stick. And the second half, they couldn't get it inside, even though they were playing down the pitch towards the golf course end, where you really do notice the hill. Now, they have a couple of positives in here. I thought Ronan Smith has been doing okay. He's a Lucan player. He's doing quite well. John Bellew, he's still there doing well. Also a Lucan player. Paddy Smith was given the full back role. Brian Hayes, I thought, was really good. 2 points from midfield. Ronan Hayes, his brother.
Very fast and athletic by all accounts, Shane, is he?
Very, very fast. They tried Donal Levy, who had been played full forward in the the Walsh Cup game against Antrim, was wing back here. He came on wing back the last day against Westmeath, and then he was full forward. Then against Antrim, he came on, scored a point wing back, and he played wing back here until he came off with a little bit of a knock, which meant that so that was number 14 playing at number 5. Number 5 ended up playing 14, who was Owen O'Donnell.
Mad, yeah. Like we were wondering about him playing wing back the last day, and then he ends up full forward. Obviously he was prolific for Whitehall in that position last year, even though you'd think it's fairly unaccustomed to him. He was brilliant.
Probably playing the entire championship.
Yeah, mad. Like, unfortunately, maybe for him and even for Micheál Donoghue as well, the fact that he picked up a bit of a hamstring injury, like the experimentation may have to stop now. And like when he's back fit, do you expect to see him at 14 or do you expect to see him at 3 or 5? Do you know what I mean? Whereas if he'd stayed fit, they would have had a couple of more games where they could have tried him in the league, but he's going to be out for probably a couple of games now, realistically.
Yeah, well, do you know what? In terms of the experiment, like if you're going into a full forward line, having always generally played in the backs and regularly in full back, a dirty old day like this is probably not the ideal one to get a chance at playing that position, because the dream scenario you'd think of is fast day, firm ground, ball in front, he turns and goes, and realistically, you're not really going to stop him. But I think, like, when you've played fullback for years, and like, you can probably picture it, ball goes in 50-50 between him and his man. He accelerates from behind, nudges his man out of the way, breaks the ball, turns, collects, and moves it forward. Like, that's kind of like on repeat how O'Donnell dominates lads over the years. Does that sound like a familiar enough story?
Yeah.
So generally, the way he's playing full back, it's not always, and he obviously can win the ball directly as well, but generally he breaks it to himself and wins it. If you're in the full forward line, you can't break it yourself and win it, because you'll have the half back line on top of you, you'll have an extra defender on top of you straight away, and you'll get swarmed, especially at county level when, compared to a club, you're going to have more lads who are physically probably in the same league as him. So very regularly the ball went in. It wasn't been won cleanly off him, but he was breaking it to himself, or wasn't coming up the first time, or maybe occasionally holding the hurley too long, and then you'd need to probably shorten it or whatever. So the trouble was it didn't stick, so he could turn and go. So if he's going to go back and do it again, like, the big work on in the meantime has to be just play, just in training, go in there, have someone feed in 100 balls to you, and it has to stick and go first time. And if that work is done in the meantime, I think it could work hugely. But based on yesterday, there's a lot of work to go before it would.
God, you'd know you're involved with management when you're throwing out words like work on. If you say the word learnings,
I felt sick when I said it. It came out, and then I was like,
if you say the word learnings, I'm dropping off. Off straight away. But like, of all the positions, your touch has to be lightning inside. Like lightning. That's all the best inside forwards. It's the deftest of touches into your hand. You're getting the ball into your hand as quick as possible. And it is a massive difference to play a club full forward and play a county full forward. Like, they are poles apart. Playing club full forward, like, you could be potentially isolated. You're probably not going to be marking a lad that's inter-county fitness. Whereas, like, at county level, you don't really, it's so difficult to burn anyone at county level. That's why, you know what I mean? Because everyone's up to a fair level. So his touch and everything would have to be absolutely on point. Like, I'd be surprised if he's not back the other end of the field now when he's back. Maybe it's something potentially they would try in a game if they need some sort of a different outlet. I'm wondering as well with Paul Crummy, if Paul Crummy, that Johnny Glen type that Micheál Donoghue had, similar type where they can go direct. Like, would you have said Dublin would get a lot of success from going direct up until recently? Probably not. But when they have that type of a fella, a big ignorant fella on the edge of the square who can catch a ball and is brilliant at laying it off and can score himself, that's a good outlet to have. So, and maybe you could look at O'Donnell being in there at some stage in a game if they need him. And obviously then you have the goal threat, that's Keane O'Sullivan as well. So there's more options, I would say, and it's Micheál Donoghue's learning a lot about how he can move the pieces around to serve him best. Yeah,
I don't think it's necessarily, like, it could be the end of the experiment, but I'd like to see it tried once or twice more, because sometimes you need to be thrown into the situation, come back, reflect on why maybe you didn't get what you wanted.
Totally. Yeah. It rarely goes perfect the first time. You need to actually make the mistakes to realize, okay, I need to do this, this, and this, or do you know what I mean?
So, look, I wouldn't totally rule it out, because the only change required is, based on what I saw yesterday, is the ball has to stick so that when he goes, like, I fully believe that if that part is done right, I don't think he will be stopped. Honestly, I don't really think there's many defenders to be able to keep with him if he turns and goes at them. He's going to be rugby tackled to the ground. He's going to have to be fouled. He'll be getting goals. But, it's a big change. It's such a big change from how you're playing the ball at full back versus how you might have to play it in full forward, when we're talking about this particular player. But to be fair to Shefflin, right, first half, we're reflecting on it at half time. It was there with Cyril Farrell and Sean Tracy with Clubber. And we're like, what forward on the Galway team has even put in a tackle in this first half? So that was a little bit of even though they were ahead, there was 111 to 7 points at that stage. And this was after coming from 5-2 behind. You were like, that nobody's put in a tackle. They totally changed in the second half. So he'll come away with plenty of positives from that game. Hurling 1234 says, Dublin full forward line, possibly Crummy, Ronan Hayes, Keane Sullivan. That's pretty good. And like when they
you're from Kerry now, are you? you got rid of the O for Keane O'Sullivan. Like, I remember we said when we had Tomas O'Shea for the live show in the windmill quarter, and he was like, he claimed that he didn't realise that he was dropping the O's for Shawnee Shea and all these boys. I thought it was gas. Interesting to hear Micheál Donoghue talking after about how he hopes to have Chris Crummy back as well. Like, getting him back and potentially playing him in around the middle of the park maybe, or even wing back. Like, he'd be a huge player to get back. Was there any inkling, Shane, about whether Liam Rush would be coming back? I know I was chatting to him before the Dublin County final, and he definitely didn't close the door on it. And he was he kind of half said to me that if they had a good run with the club and he could miss a good bit of the preseason, that would maybe help influence his decision. But Crummy will be a huge one to get back.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that we'll see Crummy back again this year. Whether we'll see Rush, now he'll be 34 during the middle of the championship next year. It's only really the injury, the legacy injuries, and I think he might have had to have a procedure on something else not so long ago. I think if his body was right, he would be, but like, how many years now are we talking about? He's had to patch himself up to get out there and go again. He was actually doing the analysis on TG Carr yesterday for the club finals. I don't know, I feel like there's less of a chance of seeing him this year, just because the toll that hurling must have taken on his body at this stage.
Yeah, unless he's well managed and is able to, do probably less training and maybe only come back in around February or something like that. Maybe I do think having Crummy back and having even Rush involved, and even if it's a bit part role, would be a huge boost too. It's funny, I kind of the Roy Keane one came into my head there. I was going to say Liam Rush would be very good to have around the place. It's like, lads are saying, have him around the place. What does he do? Tell jokes? Play cards?
Well, wouldn't that be like the time Paul O'Connell got injured on the Lions tour and he stayed around? The only player who ever had the cheek to do
it. I see even, I thought it was interesting one, even with Mo Salah coming back to Liverpool from after picking up the injury with Egypt. I have to say now, I totally understand that Liverpool would want him back from a club's investment point of view. But if I was part of the Egypt squad or, the manager, you'd surely want your best player around the place. Surely he can add something to it, can he not? Do you know what I mean? Like, surely I would have thought...
Some managers want, if a player is injured, just let them off and do the rehab somewhere else. We don't want to have to think about him. We want to focus on who we have rather than agonize over who we don't have.
Yeah, I understand that. I just think
Well, what do you make of the other Egypt players in attack?
I don't know anything else about them. I'm not even going to claim to know one, even though I do find it fascinating. Your man Lopez from Shamrock Rovers playing for Cape Verde. Isn't that an unbelievable story?
You seem to know a fair bit about this.
No, I've been listening to bits and pieces. I do think that's a mad one. They beat the Chris Hughton managed Ghana, didn't they? And he was getting woeful heat in Ghana, apparently. But I think they won since. I'm after veering off in a different direction completely. While we're veering off in different directions, Ronnie the Rocket, discuss.
Well, like, you have all the stats there. I mean, I'm just hoping, right? So I have tickets for the Crucible again this year.
Yes.
So the last session of the semi-final, the first two sessions of the final, and he's going to be on the bottom side of the draw, which, if everything works out, I'm going to see him in the semi-final, and assuming he wins that, in the final also, when he's looking to go out on his own as the absolute GOAT of world titles.
Yeah, that'd be unbelievable now. Jesus, there's some amount of water to go under the bridge before you get that. I planned on seeing him at the Northern Ireland Open, and he ended up not even playing in it. But I think he's taken 2 months off now. I just I'd even put to some of the viewers, like, has anybody, and Pádraig Gill said this to me, has anyone mastered their craft better than Ronnie? I'd say probably Phil Taylor in darts, and there's probably maybe one or two more in some other sports, but he's absolute poetry in motion to watch. It looks effortless. It's obviously not. And anybody who's played, as John Virgo would say, on the 12x6 knows how difficult it is. Like, it's phenomenal to see how easy he makes it look.
Yeah. I was playing a little bit. I played 3 frames on Saturday morning, and the pockets just felt tiny every time it over a shot. But like, it wasn't a Ding that he beat there yesterday, and Ding had an unbelievable potting conversion rate, and yet still got destroyed.
Yeah, he beat him in the semi-final 6-1. Ding had 96% pot success, and Ronnie beat him 6-1 in 73 minutes. Like, different gravy. Like, when on his game, different animal. He's going for the 8-8-8 as well. He's done the 8 Masters, 8 UK, and now he's going for the 8 World title. Richard Hogan says Ruby Walsh, and that's a fair comment. I'd probably throw maybe Tom Brady or someone like that maybe into the mix as well. Maybe Michael Jordan, but Jesus, that is some esteemed company to be in.
Yeah. The McGrath Cup final over the weekend. Derry beat Donegal 12-6.
Shift back for 1 second, Shane. Just Kilkenny and Wexford in the other Walsh Cup semi-final. I only saw bits and pieces of this, but Jack O'Connor went to town on Kilkenny. And it was the same sort of scores. I think they were all off his left-hand side, that trusty left-hand side. He was always taking a pop pass off someone. He was always in space. They did most of the damage done at half time when they were 12-6 up. They nearly managed to throw it away, ending up with 13 men, and Kilkenny ended up getting 2 goals in the second half. I think Jack O'Connor did a lot of the damage on David Blanchfield, pulling him out, or he wasn't following him. Kevin Blanchfield was Kilkenny's best player from what I saw in the second half, and Liam was playing as well. Was probably quiet enough. But Wexford did their best maybe to throw it away, but they were much the better team on the day. Much the better team.
Owen Gilfoyle seems to be doing quite well for Kilkenny at the moment. So
he's on the freeze as well, yeah.
Yeah, so he's kind of putting his hand up. I saw him scoring a goal against Carlow last week. It was very well finished. So is Jack O'Connor marrying into the Walsh Tullerone family? I have no idea. I'm
unaware of that, but if he is, I'm sure the Bowl Tommy will be making a pitch. I think, what did I hear the other day? Willie Cleary's taken over the Martins. There's a couple of other kind of big appointments there. There's a lot of big club appointments at the minute. And as we said on the show the other day, a lot of clubs with esteemed clubs without managers at the minute as well. It's getting kind of more and more difficult to fill these vacancies with the person you want.
Richard Hogan says, well, Mick, you're still sticking to your Conor Heary prediction for 2024, and this is obviously did you say to play a championship for Kilkenny?
No, I think he's a guaranteed starter for Kilkenny. I think he'd be wing forward for Kilkenny. He'd a massive impact, I'd say, in the first 10 or 15 minutes of the game, gotten a load of dirty balls, seems to come out of a ruck with the ball a lot of the time. Now he'd a very bad shot near the end that dribbled into the keeper. I think it was to goal. I think it could have been to go level, actually.
That was a bit of there was a panicky moment and a bit of a snapshot, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't that panicky. He was only on the 21. They were a point down. They were a point down at the time. And it might not be the most natural, but he's an absolute weapon under a high ball. He's brilliant in around a breaking ball. And I think he'd hugely complement the likes of TJ, Owen Cody, anyone in around there. I think he could do a lot of donkey work for those, but still come up and get a few scores himself as well. So no, I'd be very, very surprised if he doesn't start for Kilkenny.
Yeah, but put it this way, Thomas has scored 3 of their last 4 points, and O'Loughlin Gaels missed 3 of their last 4 efforts in a game decided by a point. Thomas is probably up to third best club to come out of Galway, rank ahead of Sarsfields now, but still a bit off Portumna and Athenry. What do you think?
Well, winning one is one thing, but they have cemented their greatness by winning 2. And I was chatting to John McIntyre last week, and the word he used to describe Thomas's was unfulfilled. And they would have had some amount of regrets if they didn't get their hands on a second All-Ireland. And with the age profile, will any of them be stepping away in the next year? Not a hope. Why would you jump off that carousel at this stage? There's not a hope of any of them stepping away. They'll go for 7 in Galway, and they'll go and try and do back-to-back at the All-Ireland stages. Now, you'd imagine Ballygunner would be gunning for them. You'd imagine maybe you might have a resurgent Ballyhale again, but over the next couple of years, they're definitely going to be in around the equation anyway if they can win Galway again.
Yeah. Okay. So Derry beat Donegal 12 points to 6. They're going to meet in Ulster on the 20th of April. So obviously this game won't amount to a hill of beans. But for Mickey Harte, no harm to get a bit of silverware if he's trying to get the locals on side. Just
how many McKenna Cups has he got in total now?
7 million.
I thought you were going to make. He has 12 with Tyrone and now 1 with Derry. I'd say he takes a lot of pride in them now, though. I'd say of all the titles he's won, I don't know, but he does. He obviously places some sort of stock in winning early season competitions, and that's obviously without the Glen contingent as well. So the one thing he needs to do, he needs to get greater depth, and he needs to have 22, 23 lads that he can realistically pick from on a championship day, because they haven't had that the last couple of years.
Yeah, and to do it without the Glen guys is fairly impressive, even if it is only a pre-season competition. Brendan Rodgers was sent off for Derry. Patrick McBrearty got the same for Donegal. And I was seeing on the BBC report that Conor Curran, the referee, appeared to signal that Rodgers' dismissal was for an alleged stamp on a Donegal player, while McBrearty was dismissed for his part in the short melee that followed.
It was
So
saucy enough now. It was saucy enough, and it can be at this time of the year. I was looking back at the footage. The footage emerged of the what year was it? Was it 06, I think, when Tyrone played Armagh? 19,000 at a McGrath Cup game. 19,000! And it was as saucy as you like.
That's what you want, though. What does any of this say about Jim McGuinness and his comeback? Like, is he going to be as tactically ahead of things as he was 10 or I suppose 2011 he came back, so that was 13 years ago. I mean, realistically, when he's back then, yeah, tactically you can get very much ahead of the curve, but he's gone off to another sport. You'd struggle to say it was a rip-roaring success. Now back, I mean, not that 51 is old for a manager in any way, shape or form, but like, can he come back and be ahead of the curve when he spent most of the time looking at a different sport where it hasn't necessarily worked out for him? And I mean, look, this is 12-6 in a McGrath Cup game. It doesn't really matter. But I feel like definitely he'll have the players buy-in. Definitely he'll have pretty much everybody that he wants to have. Everyone will be, trained up to the gills. But it's those other little things like, I mean, you could say the same about Mickey Harte, but he stayed in the sport throughout. Like, is there any concern there for Donegal supporters?
You were listing off things like definitely have this. Definitely he'll make sure the players' phones are put away the morning of a match. They don't have them. Whether he's ahead of the curve or not is one thing. Will he be high up on the curve? Yes, he will. He definitely will. And even to see there was a... Why do I say that?
Yeah.
Just because he's been heavily involved with like Nave Martin the last couple of years. He's had his finger on the pulse of the club game. He's obviously dipped his toe in a bit of hurling. Was in with Galway briefly for a while. It's not as if he's not around.
But which of these things worked out really well in those given seasons?
Yeah. Well, Nave Martin won the county title. I don't know if they'd ever won it before. The first year he was involved.
Did they win it the year he was involved? Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they definitely did, and he was actually in the earpiece of the manager throughout the game. It's not to say that
while being up at the other end of the country because of COVID, actually. He was watching on the video.
That's right. Yeah. So,
but, the Watford thing wouldn't have been seen as a rip-roaring success because their season didn't really go great. So shortly after that, Galway, I don't think pulled up trees that particular year, did they? If I had the right one. Yeah,
no, they didn't. No, that's.
So you're proving my point.
No, it's a fair point in the sense of it's a fair question to ask, but it's not as if he's been away, and even his work for Sky at the time. And he's been watching lots of football. He's been seeing different trends and that. I thought it was interesting.
Gary Neville's unbelievable at analysing football, but as a manager, he's absolutely useless.
Gary Neville hasn't won an All-Ireland football title with Donegal already and shown that he can cut it at the end.
I know, but he didn't go off and spend 10 years, then another sport come back and think that, he'd be right at the cutting edge again.
Yeah, but that's not to say he thinks he's at the cutting edge. I'd say he's coming in and thinking Donegal are in disarray. Do I think I can help turn it around? I probably do. The press that they had on against Monaghan was very interesting. They had everybody out. There was nobody inside their own 65 on the Monaghan kick out. So he's obviously willing to try different things. Will everything go perfectly? Probably not.
But it's not all that revolutionary, like pressing everyone up for a kick out. Yeah.
Did I say it was revolutionary?
Yeah, but you said it was interesting. How is it interesting? Everyone's doing it.
Is everybody doing it? Dublin don't do it.
Well, it's certainly
Dublin,
not.
Everybody's not doing it. The All-Ireland champions don't do it. Everybody's not doing it.
It's quite common.
It's common, yeah, but that's not what you said. You said
but
everybody's
it's not interesting.
Doing it.
It's common.
Oh, it's very interesting to see. Do you not find it interesting to see? No, I find it boring. You seem to have a bee in your bonnet against Jim McGuinness. Why? Why? I'm not sure.
No. I actually think it will go quite well under them. But just kind of when you popped up and said definitely things will be better, I was like, oh, I might have an angle here.
Well, things will definitely be better than they were last year when it was absolutely farcical.
Okay. So the O'Byrne Cup final then. Longford secured back-to-back titles under Paddy Christie. Keelan McGann's 44th-minute goal there was...
They're all having their Diora like this morning.
Yeah. The likes of Colin McCabe, he was very good. He got man of the match. I think afterwards he was being interviewed on TG Carr. Darren Gallagher, he was very good. But look, Paddy Christie obviously knows we're looking at a second, if not third string Dublin team against something that's not far off full strength for Longford. He said afterwards, everybody likes to win, but we're under no illusions. We're definitely not getting carried away. I mean, those are the two best terms of GA, aren't they?
Last
Illusions
year, they won the O'Byrne Cup and they're kind of thinking, oh, they might go in and give Division 3 a rattle. They were well beaten by Fermanagh in their first game and they were behind the 8 ball straight away. So while he is talking in cliches there, he's probably talking from experience as well.
Yeah, and he goes, the O'Byrne Cup will be quickly forgotten. They're playing against Laois next Saturday. He says, what we were really looking for was to do the basics right. The result was immaterial. As it turned out, we ended up winning, but it was more about doing the basics well in difficult conditions and showing a bit of heart. That was the most pleasing thing from my perspective. There was an awful lot of heart and fight shown. And he's absolutely on the ball there. They did. How they go against Laois though next week is, in the league. That's rightly the far more important thing. The Dubs, realistically, this competition is a trial for potential players who might be able to force their way up the pecking order.
It's a trial to make the Dublin squad, I'd say, realistically, and that's what it is. Collie Pascal got his chance last year, took it. I've only seen bits and pieces of the Dubs. Was there anybody that stood out during the league where you're thinking he'll, maybe have an impact come championship time? A few of these lads will play league. It's a matter of, I'd say Daisy's just trying to unearth a couple more. Con is still away. I think Davy Burns obviously opted out. That's a big starting defender gone, so they're going to have to fill that gap. Dean Rock is retired as well, so they're going to have to fill that gap of an impact forward coming off the bench. It's funny. The O'Byrne Cup would have been maybe 15 years ago, would have been treated very seriously by the Dubs, and it would have been, pretty much their best team going out to win most days. It's just kind of changed completely now. And just while we're talking about pre-season competitions, this whole Cork Limerick thing, third time unlucky. I think it was fog the first time, then it was ice the next time, it was wind and rain the other day, and basically a waterlogged pitch. I'd say they might as well forget about playing that game at this stage. I think Limerick are playing Tip in Dylan Quirk exhibition on Sunday, and that won't change. And that should definitely, to me, that should be given precedence over anything else. Anyway, then the league is the following weekend. So when this round one Munster League game will be played is, I don't think wouldn't be a bit surprised if it wasn't played at all.
But if you were the sponsor, you'd be pushing to get this played, wouldn't you?
Oh, big time, yeah. You already have Waterford in the final, so it's the winners of this game. See, if it had went ahead the other day and Cork had won, it would have been the perfect scenario. Limerick don't have the bother of, 2 games the same weekend, right, like that, and Cork get another game. But now it's just a big mess, really.
Yeah, okay. What's the next item we have?
There's just a couple of there was obviously the McGrath Cup final as well, where Cork and Kerry drew 1-14 apiece and Cork won 4-3 on penalties. I didn't see too much of this, but they're obviously going without the Castlehaven crew. Shawnee O'Shea, I think, going in full forward for Kerry and been playing there fairly regularly. It's interesting, but do you ever envisage a day where there's a 2-man full forward line of Clifford and Shawnee O'Shea? Maybe not at the start of a game, during a game, potentially.
Yeah, but the opposition know to sit back hard then.
And you don't have Shawnee O'Shea out to pitch to hurt them from 50 yards.
Paddy Clifford, though.
They do have Paddy Clifford, yeah. I think it's the sort of thing that will happen maybe 5-10 minutes before half time in a game or something like that, when teams don't want to maybe have as much time to react. But from the bits and pieces I've seen, and just even chatting a few Kerry folk, he's a bit of he's as good as natural inside. It's just a matter of they have the greatest natural in the history of Gaelic football also inside. So can you afford to play 2 of them inside for prolonged periods? Probably not.
Actually, I saw a couple of people tweeting about Mickey Quinn, who actually played for Longford against Dublin on Saturday, came on. He was talking about Conor Glass being the most influential player in the game. And I think I saw 1 or 2 other people tweeting about this kind of thing. I mean, he's obviously put together a huge amount, or necklace together a lot of titles since he's come back from the AFL. But would you have him down as the most influential player, or it's probably a 2-horse race between him and David Clifford at the moment? But who would you be having at number 1?
Oh, influential is probably a little bit different. I'd still have Stephen Cluxton in the influential conversation throughout the duration of his career, and even still now, because I still think he dictates affairs. Over
the entirety of his career, I would say yes. Right now, was it Would they have won the All-Ireland without him playing this year?
No.
Mm,
No, he kicked those.
I
He
don't
kicked
think
those
it's...
two frees in the first half.
Look, that's a very fair point, but like, would Glen have done what they've done without Conor Glass? Would Derry have won what they've won coming from where they came from without him?
No, well,
Glen has come from never winning a county title, being in 2 All-Ireland finals and winning one, where
and
he
Derry,
was absolutely key.
and Derry have come from not winning an Ulster in 20 years to now being one of the best teams in the country. I suppose if you're looking at it, someone taken, not saying that either club or county were in the ashes, but they were struggling. Sorry, Derry are 30 years, I should say, or was 29 years without an Ulster title before they won one. Like, he has been the catalyst in club and county, you'd have to say, without a doubt. And you kind of think, like, he's 26. You're kind of thinking he's another definitely 3 or 4 years, like, at his peak. And then he's another 3 or 4 years where he's maybe not at these levels, but still at a really, really high level. And I would say Derry folk would think most things are possible with him in your ranks. And just, I was even looking at him yesterday. Like, if you try to take him on or try and go around him, like, it just didn't happen yesterday. He just gets he's a not only is he a brilliant, point taker, he's a brilliant passer, he's a brilliant tackler, he's a brilliant fielder. There was one time yesterday, but just hang time, and he's just hanging in the air. Like, he's just there. He's like he's suspended in the air. To me, like, as regards influence and taking a team from nowhere to nearly to the top, yeah, he's right up there.
Yeah. I mean, can anyone do what Clifford is doing? Probably not. But then again, not many can do what Glass is doing either. But, like, is there anyone in the history of the game who plays the sport like Clifford versus, is there anyone in the, like, I don't think at the minute you can say Conor Glass has currently, and he probably will in time, but has he done enough yet to be one of the all-time greats? Clifford, a lot of people are already saying for the last couple of years, is the greatest footballer we've ever seen.
It's funny because Glass is 26 and Clifford is 24, and Clifford's 24 and been regarded as the greatest footballer of all time. It's mad.
But how many years did Conor Glass miss out on playing senior football for Derry by being down at the AFL?
Would have been 3 or 4.
Yeah, so obviously he lost a lot of ground in terms of that conversation. So I would just have Clifford ahead on this, but Conor Glass has a lot of time to, because actually, would you have Conor Glass down as a better midfielder than Brian Fenton? Like, so take peak Glass, peak Fenton. Who you having?
I take peak Fenton still. Peak Fenton did it from 15 to up until last year, and he'll probably do it again this year. He's done it for the guts of a decade, and particularly in those kind of clutch moments. But wouldn't be a bad little midfield pairing, would it? How would you try and negotiate the two of them? Like, and they're both able to get down and dirty as well, big time.
So you're not going to find anyone to compare with Clifford, yet we're putting, this is why you can put people in the conversation with Glass. There's no one in the conversation with Clifford.
No, and you'd confidently say that neither county would have a great hope of winning All-Ireland without either of the two of them.
So 2016 Hogan Cup final, they played against each other.
That's right, yeah. Mad, isn't it? That was the day Clifford got that goal off the back stanchion. One of the great goals down into the hill.
He scored 2-5 that day. 2 of them, 2 frees in the middle of that. So look, we're not going to criticise him for that. Actually, there's a few of the Glen lads who played that day. So yeah, you're Conor Glass and Jack Doherty, who missed out the game yesterday, both midfield. Conal Dara also from Glen. Yeah, that was the lot of it for them. So we're both saying Clifford, yeah?
Yeah. He's usually the answer to. It's like Sean Wright Phillips. He's the answer to most of these kind of questions.
Yeah, Matt Connor of Offaly was similar to Clifford, says SSRI. When I watched, he was glorious to watch. In an era where nobody was glorious, he was glorious to watch.
He'd left and right, side steps, whatever. It's actually an honour. Matt is obviously Matt. Our horse is named after Matt, and Matt has an honorary % in it. And it's just the day he won in Ferryhouse, to be there with Matt the human, and Matt the horse. It was actually unbelievable.
Equine and human alike, side by side. Okay, then also over the weekend in the Keogh Cup, Kildare, Brian Dowling's Kildare beat down 217 to 15 points in the Connacht League final the other day. Roscommon beat Galway 225 to 13. That was in the Airdome in Connacht. And actually yesterday, Meath against Mayo was moved from Ballina to the Airdome, and it took an hour in horrible conditions. And even over there, I was looking at a video, you can see it on the OurGame HQ X profile. you could see that it was shaking inside there. Some of the fixtures were shaking. They'll just tell you how bad the weather was. By the way, look, you know why some people that say, oh, it's disrespectful to have the club finals in stormy conditions and all that kind of stuff. Look, the main thing that mattered to me is that yesterday, in terms of men's GA, it was the only game in town. So it was the only thing that anyone was watching. If we had this, let's say March 17 or whatever, you could easily have a whole host of league fixtures that same day that are taken away from it. And ultimately, obviously, the ambition is to have the schedule all done inside 1 year. So maybe I was there thinking like a Christmas cracker. Let's say it's the week before Christmas that you have the All-Ireland Club finals. You just don't know what the weather is going to be like anytime between October and March. Like, what was it like when you played the club final? What was the weather like that day?
It was lovely. It was actually lovely. But I remember being in Thurles in 2002 and it was a monsoon when Burke beat Clarenbridge. And I remember being in Croker in 95 when Burke drew at Dunley in an absolute storm, worse than yesterday. So like that was on St. Patrick's Day as well. So you can't really, unless you're playing it in the height of the summer where chances are you're going to get, even if it's wet, it's not going to be, it's going to be relatively warm or something. But anything between October and March, as you say, could be absolutely disastrous weather-wise. So you can't really try and plan around that too much.
Yeah, like 2018, it was horrendous. It was so cold. It was so bitter. The wind was awful. But, and I was chatting to Adrian Ronan, of course, former Kilkenny hurler, yesterday at Croke Park. And I was saying to him, what was the weather like when you played with Greg Callan that time, Greg Ballycallan that time? And he said, that was the year of the foot and mouth disease. So it was put back about 6 weeks or something like that. So the weather was actually quite good. I totally forgotten about that. Okay, final thing to talk about then, the Harte Cup final. Sorry, we know the Harte Cup final is going to be Ard Scoil against Nina, but the drama to get there that we saw over the weekend, I'm sure people were watching this. Like the last 5 minutes of the Nina St. Joseph CBS game against Charleville CBS was nuts because Darren McCarthy, who of course is involved with the Tipperary senior panel at the moment, I believe he's been trained up by Liam Cahill and co. He had a free that was signalled a point, and again the conditions were not exactly lovely now for this either. It was signalled a point. Then the referee went in, chatted to the umpires.
The linesman disallowed it, I think.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. Yeah, went in, had a chat. It was disallowed. Went up the other end. I think there was a free won by Garrett Gleeson and the goalkeeper Kieran Murphy. He went up, knocked over the free, ran away, celebrated. This is all in injury time, by the way. And he's obviously delighted. Then Nina counter go up the other end. Gavin McGrath, he launches in a ball from the sideline, which the goalkeeper unfortunately spills, and it's bundled to the net by Dara Tracy. Then all of a sudden, it's pandemonium there again. Like this is like, the pandemonium we're talking about at Croke Park yesterday. It was the same the other day for this game.
And it was nuts. Remember everyone like running on, like it was crazy scenes at the final whistle, like mad stuff.
Yeah, and then like a couple of points then for Nina just to make sure, but they won by 218 to 117. But like these school games, there's just something raw about them and the atmosphere. Like when you get that tight game and there's a good crowd there, it's brilliant.
Well, chances are you have a couple of busloads of people who are out of school for the day as well and fairly kind of boisterous as well. And definitely, it definitely adds to the equation. ML89 really sawing the boot in here. Harte Cup final, as one Ballyhale hurler called it, a game to decide who loses to Kieran's and Athenry in semi-finals. Whoa, by God.
That loses to the Kilkenny minor team or the Kilkenny under team, more like it. The other semi-final then, Thurles CBS 114, Ard Scoil 18. I think Ard Scoil were something like 7 ahead at half-time, but the conditions were massive and ultimately Thurles turned it around and they had it level. But a late converted free from Mark O'Brien gave Ard Scoil victory. And I was reading the Tipperary Live report on this and it went as follows. Ard Scoil got a late-sided goal where Keith Lucknan managed to block an attempt at goal. And with the ball breaking, it looked like Jack Harte was ushering young John O'Keefe well out on the sideline with the substitute tripping over himself. Unbelievably, the referee was fooled into giving the free, and it must be said from this journalist's viewpoint, there was no contact with the player, and it would be a bitter pill for Thurles to swallow, as Mark O'Brien showed real composure under intense pressure to slot over the resulting free with the last puck of the game. Now, you'd know that report, I think it was Enda Tracy wrote that in the Tipperary Live. You'd know that was from a Tipperary man talking about a Tipperary school. But, the frustration was certainly massive there. Ard Scoil won't care, though, will they? even though it is
No.
difficult to swallow.
They've
But
also
both of these games going all the way down to the wires. It's great stuff.
Yeah, Ardscoil have also obviously denied an all-tip final. Wasn't an all-tip final last year? Was it Clonmel won it last year? Am I right in saying? Yeah. So like, it was Clonmel that beat Thurles. Cashel was it beat CBS last year in the final. But Shane, it's that time of the week again.
Sorry, I just wanted to say as well, Ardscoil, right? So we're thinking, geez, this is really good for Limerick hurling. They're flying and all that kind of stuff. Clare. I read through the team. 10 of the players are Clare players. No, that's not any sort of a slight on Ardscoil. That's brilliant. They're sort of helping cultivate these players, as every club that has brought through the players is. But it's kind of an interesting sort of footnote on it.
Well, it's massively fashionable for Clare folk to go in there in recent years, obviously, and someone like, obviously we've had Niall Moore on the show regularly. A Limerick man to his core, and like it's obviously tricky enough, like, because once they're in Ardscoil Reach, I'm sure he's all in on them and focusing on their development. Once they leave and they put on the Clare jersey, it's probably a different story altogether. But they're obviously back in the Harte Cup final again. Yeah.
So you were just about to bring up the goat of the week that neither of us has thought about up until this very second.
I think as well, like, I don't know. I can go for the obvious ones, and you can go for the less obvious ones, or vice versa. You tell me, because otherwise we'll both end up going for the same people. Will I go for the obvious ones, or do you want to go for them?
I'd say we both just put. Well, okay. So the obvious one, you go for the obvious one.
The obvious one in hurling to me is David Burke. And the obvious one in football is Conor Glass. It's the two man of the matches, but also the two lads that dragged their team up by the scruff of the collar when they were in all sorts of trouble in both games. So I think they're both fairly obvious. They were the heartbeat of their two teams. So if you're able to think outside the box, Shane, I know it might be the most easiest thing for a Tipperary person to do, but just try to give it a go.
Well, look, I think you're wrong by saying the obvious one in the hurling was David Burke. He was brilliant, but the obvious one is Éanna Burke.
Okay,
so it's Éanna Burke. And then I suppose it's hard to pick someone outside of Conor Glass on the football side of things. Ryan Dugan, you could make a small bit of a case for.
Ben O'Carroll, you could make a case for in defeat as well.
Great case for him, yeah.
Something we didn't mention as well that I thought was a bit mad too as well in the football was the fact that Brian Derwin scored 1-1 inside the first 5 minutes of the second half and was then kind of taken off pretty quick after. He was taken off 7 or 8 minutes later, which I thought maybe he was injured, maybe he wasn't, but I thought that was strange because he scored one off the outside of his right that was outrageous.
Yeah, it had to be an injury. A bit like, we saw the Victor Manzo one. You're thinking, can't just take a guy off after he scored when you're not exactly freely scoring here.
Yeah, you'd imagine so.
Yeah, Éanna Burke for that score as a second choice says A. Sully 180. Crather says Cian Mahoney due a shout. Yeah, very good. Éanna Burke says P-Well 74. Richard Hogan, interesting piece with Gerald Kelly before the match and TG Carr yesterday. We were in Croke Park, so I certainly didn't see it. Did you see it?
No, I know he plays with county hurling with Mayo as well. So there's obviously it's a funny one, kind of playing with Thomas's and then playing with a different county. But yeah, he was outstanding yesterday. And so like when a point was on the only kind of difference between the two of them, and he threw over that free inside his own half, like after making the save, could probably give him a shout too.
Yeah. So for me, the goats of the week have to be Éanna Burke and Conor Glass.
Yeah, David Burke and Conor Glass for me.
Okay. All right. Look, that's it for the show this week. If you want to get the audio podcast, it's at patreon.com/OurGame. Michael, we'll see you later in the week.
Sound, Geno.